In the name of the one holy and living God. Amen. I love a good conversion story. The notion of being converted, to turn around, to be transformed, is at the heart of our biblical and faith tradition. It is, I believe, the whole point of formation. That work of being formed in the ways of Jesus is so much about our turning and returning over and over again to our God. If formation and liturgy is about being transformed into the image and likeness of Christ, then conversion is key. The conversion of St. Paul, we know, is one of the most dramatic conversion stories in our tradition. In our reading from the book of Acts, we hear the third narrative of Paul's conversion. It's told 3 times in that book alone. And it's this version that, like the telling of any story of consequence, it gains and subtracts details with each telling. So they're just a little bit different, each of them. I think there's something about the multiple proclamations of this event that we should take note of, that should make us kind of take extra note of, sit up and listen more intently. The essential point is, though, that the encounter with Jesus knocked Saul down, changed his life from the inside out, changed his vocation, changed his heart, redirected him towards the resurrected Christ so that he might actually become one of those who would follow in the ways of Jesus. He turned his entire life around. Instead of persecuting Jesus and the Jesus movement, he became its greatest evangelist and defender. Now, Paul is complicated, right? Paul's a complicated guy. And, we're not going to get into all the stuff about Paul exactly, from here, but let's just note that he was converted, not perfected. On my good days, I like to give him a little bit of grace. And he does have a lot to teach us about learning the vernacular of the places where we live and move and have our being for the sake of sharing the good news. Canon Stephanie Spellers launched our time at this conference with the question about having a God story to tell. And it was so bittersweet to think about folks in our congregations who could not immediately come up with a God story. As an adult convert to Christianity, I believe that everyone has a conversion story. And I would ask you, what is yours? What is your conversion story? If it is true that the journey of faith is about living an ongoing conversion that has us turning and returning to Jesus over and over again, then even those who were born into the church have some kind of conversion story. So what is yours? The conversion that I experienced came at the sort of inauguration of my 8th grade English teacher, Mrs. Horowitz, a Hasidic Jewish woman who taught in my public school. She never showed her ankles, and she had the curls down to her shoulders. Very traditional. But she had us read the play, and I've told this story before, but I love this woman to this day. She's passed on a few years ago. She had us read the play Life with Father. Anybody know that? Yeah, okay, got a couple of folks. Life with Father, comedy of errors, all about trying to get this really uptight, staid, middle-class father, Clarence, in early 20th century New York, to get baptized. And, it just wasn't done for a man of means, grown up and all. Baptism was for babies. But meanwhile, he had his children learning the catechism. They were preparing for confirmation. And they talked about the Episcopal Church throughout this play. And I love that play because of the words. And so I think it's God's divine humor that would have me fall in love with a story that has confirmation prep as a subplot. But there you are. The play left a lasting impression on me, such that when the invitation was made years later in high school, my senior year, on a trip to DC to go to church, they said, pick a church, and then, I don't know, this is another crazy part. Like, this was 1983, and they just said, go off on church on your own. So on my own, I went off and found St. John's Lafayette Square, and that's where I had a conversion experience. I had not been a churchgoer or a Christian until that moment. I had been a seeker, and I found myself in that church, and had an experience that found me wanting more and more and more. Then I would later seek baptism years later after worshiping at church in college, almost every Sunday. There was something that happened, and I spent the last 30 years trying to figure that out. What was it? What was it that changed my life completely, turned it around? I had not seen in church anything so beautiful as that liturgy. We've talked a lot about liturgy and, the ways in which it can do a thing with us, but that was the most beautiful thing I had ever experienced, and I clearly heard God say, "You are home." That moment is the touchstone that has informed everything I've ever sought to do since, in making a genuine welcome and invitation to those who would have any way of looking towards the Episcopal Church. That first conversion changed everything, and every other conversion since has been about coming back to that touch point. Our liturgy is many things, but if it's not about that, having an encounter with the risen Christ that changes us from the inside out, I have to ask, what are we doing? The offering that we make together, whenever 2 or 3 are gathered, always comes back to being reunited with the one who died and rose again, so that we might learn that our lives are, as Bishop Jeffrey Lee says so beautifully, that our lives are about learning over and over again how to die and rise with Jesus. That's the whole thing. Learning over and over again how to die and rise. Ongoing conversion and renewal. Did you notice that in this and every telling of Paul's conversion story that Jesus says, get up? Get up and go. Get up and be baptized in the second version. Die to the old ways and rise to the life of grace, is what he's saying. Our liturgy, at its best, helps us find our place in that rhythm. Now, though the themes of this conference were liturgy and evangelism, much of what we've been about, I think, as I've observed this week at Forma, has been learning what it really means to follow Jesus and equip the saints for what, despite our beautiful buildings and, frankly, our respectability politics, is a call to live a scandalous, dangerous, and transformative faith. The price of being a Christian is still high. But too often, in our desire to save the institutional church, we settle. We settle for selling Christianity like it's on clearance. And we are not called to peddle a cheapened Christianity. People are literally dying and killing one another for being isolated, broken, lonely, rage-filled, abused, wounded, addicted, on and on and on. We know these people. They're not foreign to us. They're in our families. They're in our pews. They're in our communities. This is our world. So being the kind of Christian community that offers real balm and healing for a hurting world, having a Christianity that feeds the yearning in our bones to be fully known and loved, and that answers to empire with prophetic resistance, that is going to cost us something. We should not be surprised. Being the kind of church that truly follows in the ways of Jesus means being willing to be changed and transformed. And it will cost us. And this makes our particular moment in the church really, really hard. So hard. We have forgotten that becoming and staying Christian is a life-changing and life-reorienting work, and that we are always in the need of deep formation and praxis. And that's why you all do what you do, I suspect, because you know it. Saints, let us not be mistaken about the choices that we are making here. To choose the way of love, and we love, it's such beautiful language, the way of love. Who doesn't want to love that, right? It's beautiful. But to choose to follow in the loving and liberating and life-giving ways of Jesus is to choose not run-of-the-mill change, but radical change, deep change, hard change, the kind of change that centers Jesus and sets his self-sacrificing love as the standard, and that calls us to love neighbor and enemy, is going to change us. So to choose the way of love is to pray. Pray hard for our ongoing conversion and renewal. And friends, I believe that even if each and every one of us can't conjure up a conversion story on the spot, I find hope that the Episcopal Church may be undergoing a conversion anyway. I mean, can you sense it? Deep down inside, I think we know it. It's scary. Transformation often is. My dear friend, I got this line just on Wednesday night, sitting in the pew. Canon Carrie Schofield Broadbent whispered something in my ear on Wednesday night that I will be mulling for a long time. She asked, wouldn't it be something if 20 or 30 years from now we were to look back on this moment in time as the beginning of the glory days? I mean, wow. Yes, Lord. If this is true, we are turning once again towards Jesus, then what have we to fear? God will give us the words. God will make a way. We have nothing to fear. So let us tell the truth. The church must get comfortable with being uncomfortable. As Dr. Meeks inspired us, let us be a half shade braver. The brave space that we've created this week and experienced here, beloved, let us not let it stay with the hashtag Forma 2019. Take it home. Make those brave spaces home where you live. Create these spaces so that those who you come alongside back at home can be inspired to be a half shade braver too. And then maybe together, all of us can help God make the church again the way God desires. Every moment has the possibility of being a threshold moment that lies just within reach. And Jesus takes us wherever we are and extends his hands to us and says, come, trust, taste and see, return to me. Jesus said to Paul, and likewise says to us all, but get up and stand on your feet, for I have appeared to you for this purpose, to appoint you to serve and to testify to the things in which you have seen me, and to those in which I will appear to you. Forma, be brave. Rise up. Maybe for the last time this week, let us 1, 2, 3. Hallelujah. Amen.